There's a lot of hot lists out there, and in this video, I thought it'd be helpful to go over a few of them and explain how they pick their books. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. And in this video, we got to talk about some hot lists. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's Monday morning. Swaggle, why are you not going over the Go Collect's hottest lists of the week? Well, they actually decided to move to a bi-weekly format. So, there's no hot list for this week. And that kind of got me thinking, oh, well, what should we talk about on Monday? And that made me realize that, hey, we should probably go over all of the various hot lists and talk about, how these hot lists come about, how they come up with their data, and kind of explain some of this stuff so that we as comic book collectors can be better informed when we are going over them and understanding the books that are on the list that week. But before I get into the video for today, if you guys could drop me a like or a comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, help support the channel, do one of those things, I would appreciate it. But let's get into the subject here today. And there's really three lists that I want to focus on for this particular video. Number one, we're going to be talking about, of course, Go Collect. Number two, we're going to talk about Covrprice. And number three, we're going to talk about Key Collector's Hot 10 list. And, I think all of these companies do great jobs. I think all of these lists are important for the community. And I really, really enjoy looking at them from week to week. But I do, tend to realize, especially since I get a lot of comments from you guys, a lot of people are always asking what does this list mean? Where's the info coming from? Where's the data coming from? And in this video, I thought it'd be helpful to kind of go through each of the lists and talk about, how these lists get their books and how they decide to put what they put on there. And then also, kind of explain how we as collectors can kind of view these lists and help us be informed for what books we want to buy and what the pros and cons of each list would be. So let's get right into it. Let's start with the first one here. Of course, we're going to talk about Go Collect, the Go Collect hot list. Now, this is the list that I reviewed the other week. And like I mentioned at the top of the video, Go Collect's hot list is now moving to a bi-weekly format. So I will be covering the list every other week from here on out. And one of the reasons they decided to do that is because the way that they get their data is through eBay sales, and specifically that of CGC sales. So right here, let me explain in Matt's words here. What exactly are the hottest comics? These are the top selling single issues that have been bought and sold on eBay for the past 30 days. Think of it as a cross-section where buyers are investing their dollars. It can help you better understand the market's ebbs and flows over the last month. So again, the books that show up on this list are the ones that have been sold the most on eBay, and I believe that are graded comic books. So we're talking about volume of sales, volume of movement of sales. So that's one way to look at, what some of the hot list books are for that week. So if we go over into the market overview for Go Collect, what you'll see here is you're going to see their top 100 books. They used to have this as a top 1,000, and that's why, you might have seen me in previous weeks say, oh, up 900 spots or whatever, because it was a top 1,000. They've decided to remove that with the update of their website, and now they're only showing the top 100 books in each specific category. I would have loved to still see the top 1,000, but as it was explained to me, sometimes when you get to that 998 slot, we're talking about only a few sales. So, the swings are really, really big on that low end. So they decided to trim it down to 100 so that, it would be a bigger sample size. And I can understand why they would want to do something like that. But here we see the top 100 books, and these are ones being sold. And so you can, right now, just at a glance, just know that Eternal's number one, the fact that it fills up the number one slot on this list means that from their data, from what they see on eBay, from what they see as far as CGC slabs being sold, that Eternal's number one is the most sold and or bought book, right? It is moving the most of all of the books in the market that they can measure. And so that's kind of one interesting way to evaluate the data on their end, right? We're thinking, okay, Eternal's number one, this book is being, this is the hottest book in all of the market right now. First appearance of Icarus, first appearance of the Eternals, etc. But we as comic book buyers and collectors can view it in different ways, right? Of course, we know why this book is being sold and bought so much, right? Because we had the Eternals film. The Eternals film just came out, and so everyone is thinking Eternals. Everyone is, wanting to get the first appearance of Icarus or whatever it is. But one of the things that we have to remember is that since this is volume of sales, we don't know if people are, buying this book because they all want it, or if people are selling this book because we are on the other end of the movie. So that's something that we have to consider when we're evaluating this book as being quote unquote the hottest comic of the week, or not necessarily the hottest comic of the week, just say the hottest comic in the market, because it's not on the Go Collect hot list this week. It is just the #1 book that is being sold. So what Go Collect does with their hot list, when they have the 5 hottest comics of the week, they talk about books that have jumped the biggest or have taken the biggest rise in sales. So they might be down here at like, the number 10 slot. It might be New Mutants 98, number 10. And, this week it was number 10. And then all of a sudden there was a trailer for Deadpool or whatever, and it jumps up to the #1 slot. So maybe it had the biggest jump in sales of volume, and that's why it's going to show up on the hot comic list. So that's kind of how Go Collect gets their data, and that's kind of like how we want to evaluate it, where it's like either this book is being sold because everyone is over the movie, right? Everyone wants to get rid of their whatever ASM 361 because of, Carnage is no longer going to be, the pop culture villain, or people are still so excited with Venom #2 because it just came out, then people really love the portrayal of Carnage and everybody still wants to buy that book. So again, depending on how you want to look at the data, that's going to be your way of evaluating how you want to perceive what it means for Go Collect to have, its top 5 hottest comics. All right, let's jump over to another hot list. And this one, of course, is Covrprice's top 10. And Covrprice does a hot list every week, but it is different than that of Go Collect, right? Go Collect, again, was focusing on volume of sales and specifically those that are graded. Covrprice actually does an interesting thing. They actually really do a good job kind of evaluating just like any kind of book, and they take different values into consideration here. But let me put it in their words. So CP's weekly top 10 lists use real sales data analytics to identify the top comics each week. And you can see right here that they will explain, their 7-day trend. Really, this is the number that we're looking at the most as far as what Covrprice is. This is in the last 7 days, what books have been trending the most in terms of its sales, right? So they'll talk about, units sold, right? This is important. So this is kind of how Go Collect does their evaluation, right? Based on units sold. But they will also take into consideration the top weekly sale. So they'll look at a high-end number. And specifically, this one will say raw comic. And then sometimes they'll say top weekly sale graded comic. So Covrprice will take the top 10 books just in terms of like what is both being sold and highest numbers, and could be raw and could be graded, whatever the case may be. These will be the books that are on this list. And that's really great because I feel like this list does a great job evaluating, just from this last week, what is going on? Like, right? What is everyone FOMOing into in this current week? But one of the things you have to consider with a list like this is that I might make a video on the YouTube channel where I say sleeper spec books, right? And I talk about, a random Incredible Hulk 203. I have no idea what that book is, right? But I talk about this book, and then people who watch my video, like let's say 40 people go out and decide to buy that book on eBay. Well, that book could very well end up on Covrprice's list the next week. And in fact, I think there have been times that I've done videos where a book I talked about did end up on Covrprice's list. So, we as collectors, just because we see Swaggle talking about a book and it ends up on this list, doesn't mean that this is a book that we should really, be considering as like, oh, this is a hot book because of some market factor. I mean, this is a book that is hot because of, me having talked about it. And with all due respect to myself, I'm not sure that what I promote within my videos should be an indication of what books are hot in a certain market. So that's something to always remember with Covrprice and what books you see on this list. You have to really, really understand why they got hot that specific week. For instance, World War Hulk was a book on this list for a long time. Sometimes they're books that are just like this one right here, Moon Knight. I know it's like a new Moon Knight. Maybe a lot of comic shops were, out of their inventory and people wanted to buy it. So people were buying it online. So things like that. So it depends, because this one can sometimes be a little bit trickier to determine why the books are hot. Whereas like say in the Go Collect one, we know that people are talking about volume of sales, and typically they're all CGC graded books. So, we can almost sort of assume that the people who are creating the numbers and the data for that list are what I would consider the more hardcore comic book collectors, right? Because they're spending higher dollar amounts with those CGC graded comic books in order to create that volume of sales. So, people who are buying that stuff or selling it, presumably, believe or don't believe or whatever the case may be. But those are like some of the most hardcore comic book collectors spending the most money. Whereas in this right here, Strange Academy number 13, I'm sure is a great book, but I'm sure it's one that you can find for, $5, $10 online. So there might just be a bunch of units being sold. Although, like we can see here, top weekly sale is $40. All right, and let's go on now to the next hottest list that I wanted to talk about. And this, of course, is Key Collector's top 10 or hot 10 comic book list. And now you might see other YouTubers like Comic Tom and stuff like that talk about the books on this list. And this is, again, another way to kind of view the market. And I think one of the things that we want to, talk about with regards to like, how does Key Collector come across their data? Well, from how I understand it, it is this week's record-breaking sales right here. So Key Collector is not necessarily talking about, volume of sales. They're not necessarily talking about like the book that is trended the most. What they are talking about for their hot list is the record-breaking sale, right? A new personal best for a specific comic book at a specific grade. So you can see right here, they have Iron Man number 55. We know that book got kind of hot because of the Eternals movie. And we can see previous highs in brackets. So a 9.4 sold for $32.40. Previously, it sold for $32.01 in September. So it's up 1%. A 9.2 sold for $2,900. Previously, it sold for $2,800 in October, up 4%. So again, this is why it is on this list, because it has been sort of, deemed as a book that has set a new high number for its specific grade. Now, also, as far as I understand it, Nick over at Key Collector does a little bit of curation with regards to this specific list. So that is also something to take into consideration because he has another section that is the almost hot 10. And it's not necessarily like always going to be, record-breaking sale with the highest percentage. It's going to also have some curation. Like, for instance, he's going to talk about this book right here because of the Eternals tie-in. So that's also something to think about as well. But you can see here, Morbius, first appearance of Morbius. We can see, again, previous high brackets, 8.0 sold for 1920, previously 1880, so 2%. And then so on and so forth. You can see 2.0, 400, last week 300, 33% upgrade. So this is all something to consider when you're evaluating this list, that this is the new sales price. And that could be, a helpful way to, look at the market, right? Like we can understand like, okay, like this is someone out there really, really believes in this book. So they bought this at the top, right? They bought this at the top, but that can also sort of indicate to us that it's like, it only takes one purchase for this book to make this list, right? So it's not like a volume of sales thing. It is one purchase for someone who believes in this thing. Like remember when the Marvel Spotlight number 5 first Ghost Rider sold for $250,000? Well, guess what? That was the number one book on Key Collector's list that week for obvious reasons, because it set the ultimate high for that book. But that book wasn't going to show up on Go Collect's list that week because there was only going to be, one sale there. So that's something to, consider and think about when we're talking about, the books that are on this list. Now, the last thing I want to point out is that sometimes these lists do have crossovers based on what we see. So we can see Avengers number 62 ended up on the list this week. This is the first appearance of M'Baku. Why it's ended up on the list? Because we're seeing new previous high in brackets. So 150% at the 8.5, 111% at the 6.5, 163 at the 5.0. We can also go back to Covrprice, and I think right here we will see Avengers 62. This was also on the list. So as a 7-day trend, it's up 203%. Top weekly graded comic sale is $6.95, and weekly units sold is 29. And then Go Collect, which of course, like I said, didn't come out with a hot list this week. But what we can do is we can go in here. I'm going to go into the Silver Age, and I'm going to look for this book and see where it is on this list. And I did do this before I started recording, so I do know that is somewhere here, a few pages in. And we will get to it right now I believe that it is. We can see, yep, right here, it is on the number 67 spot, and you can see right there, new to the list. So that means that, at the very least, this book was outside of the top 100 at some point, but because of the recent surge, it is now in the 67 slot. So if we're looking at the cover price list, right, we see that 29 units have been sold. So maybe like at some point last week, only a couple units were being sold for this book, and now a bunch has been moved in the market because of M'Baku, the rumors that he might have a big role in the Black Panther 2 movie. So this book is being sold, and who knows, maybe when Matt comes out with his list next week, which is now on a bi-weekly cadence, we will see that book. It's very, very possible, but it all just depends on how many units of that M'Baku book sold, because it doesn't matter that it's setting a new high. All that matters is that it's transacting in the top 5 of all books being sold, and it has the biggest jump in the market. I hope that helps you guys sort of like understand, these various lists and kind of break down like how they come across their various books that show up. So anyways, I will be covering Go Collect's hot lists next week, as they will be on a bi-weekly cadence from here on out, and we'll see what I decide to do, on these other Mondays. Maybe I should go over other hot lists. Maybe I should go through some of the Go Collect stuff myself and just talk about it. Let me know what you guys think. What would you guys like to see me do on Mondays? I can, of course, make evergreen topics or talk about something different, but let me know if you would like me to kind of still go over the market. Maybe we can have like our market Mondays, so to speak. Anyways, that's all for this video. Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I will see you in the next one.